Previously on the Jay and Dan podcast.
I hope these aren't Monster Energy drinks or we'll die.
A sexy football player? I'm like, oh, Tim. A sexy basketball player?
This tribal tattoo on my ankle, this dolphin on my ankle means I murdered 7 inmates.
Well, I'm butt chugging. Butt chugging.
Wow, that was compelling. I can't wait to watch the next episode.
You're listening to the Jay and Dan podcast, brought to you by Mark's Never Iron Perfectly Pressed Shirts.
Dance. Episode 7?
The Jay and Dan podcast, brought to you by Mark's Perfectly Pressed Shirts.
Yes. You really had to think about that, didn't you?
I want to say pants all the time. We heard the sexy thing. Going back to the last podcast, we were talking about Kate Burness and what she was going to go as, and she ended up going as a football player, and producer Tim kept saying, oh, a sexy football player? So my brother Vince sent me a text on Halloween. He said, tell your producer Tim that my 2 daughters went as princesses, sexy princesses. I was amazed that Vince listens to the podcast, so that's great.
Yeah, we always talk about your older brother, Sean, because he watches our show and critiques us. And
he's got a lot of issues. Vince has lesser issues, so it's a good thing.
Are you the one brother in the family that has the least amount of issues? Actually, knowing you as long as I have, I feel like you probably have the most issues.
Yeah, I think we all have issues.
Yeah, the O'Toole boys. That's what everyone said in Peterborough. Oh, those O'Toole boys, they got a lot of issues.
That's something that has been said. And we heard the butt chugging song.
Yeah.
This person, Thule, no relation, 09 on Twitter, sent me some lyrics for the butt chugging song.
Oh, would you like to sing?
Yeah. I'm butt chugging, check it and see. I got malt liquor inside of me. Come on, baby. Undo my pants. I'm butt chugging.
Why malt liquor?
It'd probably rhyme better. I don't know.
Why not, eh?
Way to go, Thule09. Well done.
I got an email or a tweet from Amrit Gill. I would marry Jay if he wasn't old enough to be my dad. F*** you.
Someone actually... Oh.
There we go. Energy drink time.
It was Halloween this past week, and you just mentioned F you.
Boy, that's delicious. What? That's punch?
That's disgusting.
What? I like that.
Guava punch?
It's guava punch. That means it's good for us.
What is guava?
It's a fruit.
I sent out a picture of one of the treats my daughter got. One piece of Lego. We empty the, you
I saw
empty
your
the bag
tweet.
out.
Yeah.
So some guy responds to me. This is at S. Lairdo. F you. I said, I'm like,
what?
That was his response to my picture of a single Lego. F you.
Maybe he works for Lego.
But then I was told it was a Mega Block. It wasn't an actual.
Oh, so that makes it better that she didn't get candy? Your hillbilly costume, how did that go over with all the neighbors?
They loved it. They didn't know who it was.
We put it on SportsCenter on Halloween night, and
thank you very much.
People were horrified.
I thought I pulled it off.
Extremely horrified by it.
But I told the kids, I said, hey, if you eat too much candy, this is what your teeth turn out like. And it's easy to do a hillbilly, and you got the hillbilly teeth in.
Sounded like the maid at the Sheraton Hotel in Calgary.
I made Weston Dressler's bed.
Yeah, her.
You might think our voices sound different. They do because of this.
Oh yeah, we Movember has started. tsn.ca/Movember. Dan, myself, and Gino are working as a team this year. We were going to go individually, but Dan didn't like that idea.
Well, it's a pain. Hey, Jay's got more donations than you. How does it feel? Those are the same people on Twitter. They're like, hey, how's it feel to have 30,000 less followers than Jay? Hey? Who in life Who are these people?
Well, yesterday, I did 2 shows. I did the 10 and the 1 a.m. because you were off, and I had to double up my workload. So after I do the early show with Dutchie, I head over to Shoppers Drug Mart, pick up some toiletries and such. I'm at the cashier, and there's like a big lineup, and I drop my bag, and all my stuff goes everywhere. And then I get back, I'm like, whatever. And then I get back to work, check Twitter. It's like, hey, dropped your bag at Shoppers, idiot.
Was that your Vagisil?
Way to go. You must have felt stupid. Yeah, I guess I do. Thanks a lot, you jerk. Kevin Singer sent us this tweet. So my little sister's new favorite thing to say is, going for a dart.
Nothing wrong with that.
Hey, going for a dart.
You know what I won't be going for ever again is Guava Punch energy drink. Ugh.
It's not that bad.
It tastes like someone mixed water with some old cigarette butts and poured some Hawaiian Punch into it, and then they came up with this drink.
That's very specific, the way you described all that. So anyway, we're growing mustache. No, I understand You're going to grow a handlebar mustache.
Yes, I'm going with a different look because, as we established last year, you have more lip real estate than I. So you have the big Magnum PI, and I have it looks like I'm a French inspector from Paris.
No, but the handlebar isn't going to make you look like a French inspector from Paris.
I said I looked like that last time.
Oh, last year.
This time I'm going to be tough.
But you did that weird thing where you shaved the middle in like the
I was
middle.
trying something different.
Did you just think you were going to start a new trend?
Yes. And the thing is, my handlebar mustache will make me look tougher than every single character on Sons of Anarchy.
You're literally the only person I know who has seen that show and hates it. I mean, you not only dislike it, you hate it, and then there's so many other people who are like, no, that's one of my favorite shows ever. So
no,
you're such a unique person, what you like and don't like.
They're supposed to be bikers. So you're supposed to be, hey, if I saw this guy in a dark alley, I'd be terrified.
Yeah.
No, I'd go up to them and high-five them.
Right.
I would not be scared of any of those. If I was scared of people, I'd be scared of the people on Boardwalk Empire. Those guys, they're mean. They're mean. Those are mean characters. Sons of Anarchy, and it's so overacted, and it's just, I wasted a couple hours of my life watching that.
We'd love to get our listeners' feedback on this. Do you like Sons of Anarchy? Do you think Dan's an idiot? Will you grow a mustache?
And
Will you donate to us?
A lot of people were in agreement with my Mila Kunis.
No one was in agreement about that. No, okay, a lot of people. How, 2?
3, I think.
Yeah, 3. Most people thought you were insane.
Well, people think that usually anyway.
So, like I said, tsn.ca/Movember. All the money goes to a good cause, men's health. So please donate.
And get your prostate checked.
Yeah, get a finger up your bum.
Well, Jay and I do it before every podcast.
Huh?
Why not, eh?
That's, I'm speechless. The worst part is I don't even remember it.
Dropped off my car the other day to get fixed. It's got a lot of lights on in the dash. We'll get into that in another podcast.
How many miles on your car now? Or how many kilometers?
388,000.
So you're like one of those. You're getting to the point where you're literally Lexus or Toyota is going to call you up and say, "Hey, we want you to be in a commercial."
Oh, I want to be in a commercial. Yeah. I want to be like that guy who he does home inspections and he drives his RAV4 everywhere.
That's right. How many? Yeah, like 600,000 clicks or something.
I'm going to get to 1 million. Anyway, so I drop my car off and I give my name and the girl's like, "Oh, you the guy on the radio?" I'm like, "No." "You do sports?" I'm like, "Yeah." So we get into it and she's like, "I love when you're, who's that brown hair? I'm on right?" "Yeah." And then she gets talking a bit more. She goes, "Yeah, when you and that Andre are together, it's hilarious." Andre.
Toolsy and Andre. Sports Center. Toolsy and Andre. So we might be working Christmas time this year. We've just discovered everyone else is booked off Christmas, but you and me.
Yeah, I didn't get my...
We dropped the ball on that one.
Yeah.
So people could be sitting around your holiday tree, and you could be watching Toolsy and I doling out the highlights, the NBA highlights. That might be fun, actually. Will you bring in a turkey or something?
A turkey or a ham.
Yeah, just a big ham. No forks, knives, nothing to carve it with. Just bite into that ham.
Maybe we'll have hockey by then, but if not, then the Raptors will be getting glowing ratings like they did for their first game of the season.
What did they get?
I don't know, the highest rated Raptors game in like 80 years or something.
What? It was on TSN, too.
It was.
It was exciting. You want to discuss this very quickly? Kyle Lowry, instantly my favorite Raptor, I don't know, ever. He was awesome.
Yep.
He's so tenacious and fun to watch. Jonas Valanciunas is great. DeMar DeRozan, 4 years, $40 million. What the hell?
I knew you'd bring that.
Why?
The money was there.
No one else. Why? I realize no free agents will come to Toronto in the NBA. It's like
Correct.
seen as a backwater. But that doesn't mean you have to sign the crappy ones to $40 million deals. Sorry, I don't mean to say crappy. I'm being a little hard on DeMar DeRozan.
Give him some time.
He's had 3 years. We know what DeMar DeRozan is. He's not a $10 million a year player. Steph Curry signed for $11 million a year.
Oh, I love that guy.
Yeah, me too.
So fun to watch.
Okay, what are you going to do? Have a Pop Rocks?
Well, am I going to explode if I have Pop Rocks and then an energy drink?
Let's see. Try it.
Okay.
There you go.
You're burning my tongue.
That's pretty good, actually. That's good podcasting. Right, you're going to take a sip now?
I'm kind of scared.
Wait, okay, do it.
Oh, it bites.
Yeah, not bad.
I'm still here, though.
You did it.
That was our first podcast experiment. Brought to you by Mark's Perfectly Pressed Shirts.
We should get Bill Nye the Science Guy on here. Dan Shulman is our guest on this podcast, by the way. We're very excited. We're going to talk about the Blue Jays.
Oh,
Yeah,
we're going to talk about
a new blockbuster deal with ESPN. Dan Shulman.
I also wanted to refer to something that happened on the last podcast. Don't know if you noticed it, but I'm sure if our regular listeners listen to our podcast, they heard it. You had a dude overload, as you're about to hear.
Dude got real fast. And all of a sudden, two dudes were toe-to-toe. One dude wants to fight another dude, but the dude who doesn't want to fight realizes it. Dude, what's going on? You got a better view than I do. Oh, no, dude, I'm just playing. Those two dudes were toe-to-toe.
I was howling. I listened to it when I got home. I'm like, that's a lot of dudes.
Dude, there was a lot of dudes.
That was in reference to On-Right's story about almost fisticuffs in a Chicago washroom at a Bears game.
Yeah, at Soldier Field. Still haunts me to this day. Dude. I did say dude a lot.
I loved it.
Do I say dude?
You don't?
No, I don't really say it that much.
Did they say dude a lot in Chicago?
Maybe, yeah. Maybe I picked up on their vernacular. That seems more like a California thing.
Speaking of dude, sorry, you were going to say something. I tweeted something about diners, drive-ins, and dives the other night. You
tweeted that if you could have the food that you were watching on diners, drive-ins, and dives delivered to you instantly, that would be a great business.
I think people would pay a lot of money if the food they just saw cooked on diners, drive-ins, and dives could be delivered. I've tweeted about Triple D several times. If you ever tweet about that show, people automatically assume that you're high on drugs.
Well, they assume that you're home and you're smoking pot and that you're watching Triple D and just having a great time, getting the munchies. I
just love that show. And my family eats at like 3 p.m. for dinner. So I'm starving at all times. So I watch that show. I'm starving even more. I haven't just smoked a pound of marijuana. I'm just literally hungry.
Why do you guys eat at 3 in the afternoon?
I don't know.
Like, why would that happen?
It's usually around 4. It's between 4 and 5.
Okay, can we do the Critics Corner?
What, we have another one?
Well, this is a little different. So this is the Saskatoon Star Phoenix, and it's not specifically about our podcast, but it's a fictional Ask an Expert column about the NHL lockout, I believe. And so this is Ask TSN personality Jay Onright. Dear Jay Onright, what's more boring during an NHL lockout? Continental Hockey League highlights or close-ups of John Huffnagel showing his teeth after every play? And then it has me saying, "You can't see me now because I'm not on TV, but I've got this goofy half grin on my face, and I'm leaning toward the camera, and my eyes are slightly bugged out, and there's this awkward silence, and I'm pretending that I'm the only person in the studio who doesn't get the joke. And it's my joke." Hey, someone told me that when I do that, well, they think I sound like a lot of different people, but I think I sound like Rick Moranis' Jerry Todd. Now, this was a character that Rick Moranis did on the old SCTV show, and it was absolutely brilliant. Christoph has a clip of Rick Moranis' Jerry Todd.
And a good morning to you in the wee small ones of a Saturday. And we've got the request lines open on the Jerry Todd Show, and let's see who's there. Good morning, how you doing?
Hi, Jerry, I'm fine. You?
Pretty good. What can we do for you this morning?
Could you play Mission Impossible?
Which episode would you like to see, my dear?
I don't know any of them. Oh, could you play Stairway to Heaven too, Jerry?
Okay, we'll try and get that for you. Thank you for calling. Request lines are open anytime here on the Jerry Todd Show.
He was amazing.
Rick Moranis, that's a guy that just stopped doing anything.
Yeah, I don't mean to bring the mood down, but what happened to him, I believe his wife passed away. She got cancer, passed away, and he raised his kids by himself. He sort of took off from Hollywood. I think he had made enough money, and he raised his kids on his own. And it's a shame because, you know, he was an amazingly funny comic talent.
They were going to do another Bob and Doug, but that got canned.
Yeah, that got canned. Now, another thing that reminded me of Rick Moranis on the SportsCenter Top 10, oh, man, we had Dennis Casey Parks singing "O Canada" at a Las Vegas Posse game back when the Canadian Football League expanded to the United States. This is one of the greatest moments ever. So first, this is Las Vegas lounge singer Dennis Casey Parks attempting "O Canada."
From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard.
Here it is.
For thee.
See, he thought if he just kept that note going, no one would notice that he didn't have the melody correct. He was singing "O Tannenbaum."
It's a classic scene whenever that someone pulls that up on YouTube, or if someone pulls it up out of the archives in the SportsCenter newsroom. It's almost like people huddle around a fire when you're cold. Whenever that's played, it's like it attracts people because everyone just loves to see it.
It's so funny that he just decided, like, you wonder what happened. Like, did they approach him and say, "We need you to sing the song"? And did he say, yeah, I know that song? Or did he just get the lyrics and say, "Yeah, I'll just sing it. I'll come up with my own melody"? But I remember when that happened, and I remember I was telling Darren Detition this. Darren Detition used to host a show called Sports Night, and those of the listeners in around Edmonton will remember that show. Perry Solkowski, Darren Detition. It was like Sports Line, so a lot of the country remembers the old Sports Line half-hour show, but they called it Sports Night. And when that happened, when that Dennis Casey Parks thing happened, Dutchie and Perry played this clip of Rick Moranis as Mel Torme singing the Star-Spangled Banner.
SCTV now signs off with Mel Torme. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early? Pardon me, boy, is this a Chattanooga choo-choo? I've got my share. It's just travel spare. Oh, once I built a railroad, made it run, kept it running on time, Once I built a railroad, now it's done.
Yeah, there's Moranis.
Moranis twice.
Yeah, he was
in the same podcast.
Wouldn't it be great to get him on? Man, I would love to get him on the show.
Speaking of Dutchie, he was, well, so are you, and so was Jennifer Hedger, all in my dream last night.
Here we go, another dream conversation.
There was no Jason Bateman.
Okay.
We were at my old high school. We were in the St. Peter's High School, in the old St. Peter's in
Peterborough,
Ontario.
Were we in the smoking area?
No, we were in the huge auditorium. It was a massive auditorium. It was really nice. We were sitting there. We were going to tape our podcast from there, but we were sitting in the crowd, and it was like the place was packed. So we start doing the podcast, and I'm like, hey, watch this. So I went up on stage and took my clothes off, and I was wearing tighty whities. And I'm like, hey, and I'm dancing around. Then I sit behind a desk, and I start doing my section of the podcast from a table on the stage while you're in the crowd. And then someone's wondering if a piano, I know I hate hearing about people's dreams too, but someone wondered if a piano worked. So Carlton, one of our camera guys here at TSN, came up and we started seeing if the piano worked. And then I looked and you were gone. And so I'm like, where did he go? And you were back at the back of the auditorium. I'm like, I thought we were doing a podcast. And you're like, yeah, no, you weren't paying attention.
I went to the Pig's Ear.
No, you're just sitting there. So we bailed on the podcast.
I went to Spanky's.
That's
a weird dream you just had.
It was very bizarre.
Also this week, we had photographs taken of us in the newsroom because Toronto Life magazine is doing a feature story on us. I don't know what the hell they could possibly talk about, but they are doing a feature story on us, and so they sent a photographer in to take pictures of us, and we were doing all sorts of Naomi. We did all sorts of fun pictures, but the thing was, Naomi was wearing a Golden Girls T-shirt, super cool Golden Girls T-shirt, and it reminded me that we talked about 80s TV themes last week, and made me think maybe we could talk about the Golden Girls theme this week, and that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's give that one a listen, Christoph.
Thank you for being a friend.
This could be the podcast theme.
Travel down the road and back again. Your heart is true. You're a pal and a confidant.
Okay, sing it.
And if you threw a party,
Invited everyone you knew, you would see the biggest gift would be from me, and the card attached would say, thank you for being a friend.
Wow, that is catchy.
What a great tune.
Who sang that? I just found
some dirty whore.
Cynthia Fee.
Yeah, she was a pirate hooker.
Can I pull up the, because it's a popular topic, and I love talking about TV theme songs.
Yeah.
How about Airwolf? You remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Show?
Oh, this is an incredible one. Here it is. Oh, here we go. And again, this opening will go for 3 or 4 minutes. Of the 52-minute runtime of the show, this will take a good 1/10 of it.
So everyone knows what Golden Girls is about, a bunch of old ladies. Airwolf, probably not as many people know what Airwolf's about. It's about Jan Michael Vincent, right?
Yeah, he was the star.
He
massive cocaine problem.
He flew around in a helicopter. Mm-hmm. But not like an A-team helicopter.
But who paid for that?
I know.
Who paid for the helicopter? Who paid for the missiles? Who paid for the underground bunker? What were their salaries? Ernest Borgnine showed up.
That's the second time Airwolf's been mentioned on our podcast.
One more theme before we have a couple more guests we want to get to, but one more theme. I have to get to this because I was at a Halloween party last Saturday, and this girl told me this story at the party. She said she lived next to where they used to film The Littlest Hobo, which they're still airing on CTV Saturday mornings. And this girl told me that there were actually 5 Littlest Hobo dogs, right? And they would all rotate in, do different scenes. And she said that when they were on a break during filming, that the dog handler, would bring the 5 Littlest Hobo dogs on leashes around to everyone in the neighborhood's house, and that you could pet the Littlest Hobo and just hang out with the Littlest Hobo.
So there was more than one London?
There was more than one London. There were 5 London. It's like 5 A-team vans. Now, the Littlest Hobo theme, that is a classic.
There's a voice that keeps on calling me. Down the road, it's where I'll always be.
Every stop I make, I make a new friend. Can't stay for long, just turn around and I'm gone again.
Maybe tomorrow
I want to settle down.
What does this podcast come to?
Well, I'll tell you what it's come to, Dan.
Us singing.
Last week on the show, I made a comment about people who live on the lakeshore in Toronto. Do we have that clip, Christoph, about me? No, we don't. Okay, it's not important. What I said was, I basically said that Toronto's the only city that ignores the giant lake that it exists on. That we, as a city, pretend the lake doesn't exist and no one lives there. And that if you meet someone who lives on the lake shore, that you assume they've just moved to the city and they'll soon be gone.
Right.
What I forgot was that one of my best friends and one of our finest producing talents at the network, and the man who organizes the TSN Christmas party every year and should get paid for it and doesn't, Rick Hodgson, lives on the lakeshore with his beautiful wife and baby son, and has for many years. And so we wanted to bring Rick on to do a little bit of a rebuttal. Give us your reason why you've stayed on the lakeshore all these years.
Just the proximity to everything. It's right by the dome. I live 3 minutes. I can be at the ballpark.
Because you love the Jays.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you're a huge Jays fan.
The biggest.
And we had Shulman on, by the way, this week, so you're going to love that.
Yeah, fantastic.
And okay, I want you to tell your Dan O'Toole story, because I mentioned that you organize the Christmas party every year.
Right, and we have the after party at my house on the waterfront.
And which is close, so that's another argument for the lakeshore. That's true.
It is very close.
And so what happened? You tried to convince Dan to come back to the party.
Well, one night, me and the beautiful Megan Redwood were coming out of a karaoke bar.
Megan's one of our writers on SportsCenter.
Right. And Tequila Sunrise, which is unfortunately no longer there.
Oh, yeah.
And we actually, coming down the stairs, practically ran Dan over on the street.
And I believe I was taken hostage and thrown into a taxi cab.
Yeah, pretty much. I promised you pizza pops, which I don't think I ever delivered. And I actually bought pizza pops to bring here today, and I forgot them this morning on my way in.
I want my pizza pops.
That would have been delicious, actually.
I gave him a couple of Ryan Gingers, and I passed out. I woke up in the morning, and he was gone. So I don't know how he left, how he got home.
What the hell? You bolted?
I think I still lived downtown then, didn't I?
Yeah, I'm not sure why you were there. You were wandering around by yourself near a pile of garbage, as I remember.
Yes, I'm just hanging out by garbage.
It sounds like your dream.
I was playing a hobo, and it was nowhere close to Halloween.
And you were not London. You were not the littlest hobo.
No, if I remember correctly, I'd met up with some friends from Vancouver that night.
Something like that, I'm sure.
Something like that.
I don't believe that's true. Rick, thank you. That was fun.
And hope you guys both make the TSN Christmas party this year, December 7th at an undisclosed location.
What, not Croc Rocks?
Well, you just gave it away.
Oh.
Gave it away. Okay.
At Crocodile Rock.
Crocodile Rock.
Now, we should go back to that. For people who don't know Crocodile Rock, like people listening to us across the country, it is known as a...
Cougar Bar?
It's a Cougar Bar. How did it end up there, Rick? How did it end up at Croc Rock?
It's one of the only places that's kind of like has a dance floor and a bar, so it's not like a club. You don't.
But there's other places in Toronto that have dance floors and bars. What? But Croc Rock was just has that certain seediness.
Yeah, it has that certain something. And
yeah.
5 years ago when I started doing it after Bell originally canceled the Christmas party.
Yeah, after they shut that down.
They shut it down.
Yeah.
I took it over and started just planning it, and then I thought Croc Rock, get everyone there. I think the first year there was about 40 people, and last year there was about 110.
And my favorite thing now is that our bosses show up to it, but they don't pay for it. So they're like, oh, everyone having a good time? I should be there too. Oh, pay for it? No, we don't have the money for that.
No, why would we do that?
No, but they're more than welcome, right, Rick?
Oh, yeah. Everyone's welcome across the Bell family, and even if you just stop by.
Perfect. That means you, Aaliyah Jasmine. Matt Cade is here as well. Matt and Rick are very good friends, and you can understand why, because they're practically the same person.
That's true.
Matt Cade is the host of the TSN Draft Center podcast with not only TSN scout Craig Button, but TSN managing editor of hockey Steve Dryden, who has become a mythical figure here at Canada Sports
Those are
Leader.
a couple of big names.
Big-time names.
And you decided to have me on to promote the podcast.
Well, I can't stand those other two people.
Yeah, they're two of the worst humans I've ever met.
They're actually wonderful. They really are. But no, we wanted to bring you on, Matt. Okay, first of all, whose idea was it to start doing a Draft Center podcast?
I think it just developed at you guys know Craig pretty well, and he's a storyteller. He's got lots of stories. He's been in the business for so long.
And maybe the nicest guy I've ever met in my life.
God, he really is, yeah. And I just kind of I recommended it to Craig, and he was all for it, and we just one day did it.
So give us quickly, right off the top, everyone talking about the Seth Jones, Nate McKinnon battle for first overall. Where do you see it right now as it stands right now, Matt?
Well, Craig would tell you he's got Seth Jones number 1. Of course, on Bob McKenzie's preseason rankings, he had McKinnon, and I'm pretty sure it was across the board. Every scout he talked to had McKinnon number 1. I'd be surprised if McKinnon didn't go number 1 at this point, but it's a long season, and this stuff always changes.
McKinnon is a friend of the show.
He is a friend of the show. Yes.
Friend of the show, nicer kid you couldn't hope to meet. And just an incredible talent. And then Connor McDavid is a kid who obviously won't be drafted for a few years, but have you had a chance to see him play? And for those of us who, or for our listeners who don't know much about him, can you just give us a little synopsis? An exceptional player.
That's correct. Well, first of all, he's just 15. He turned 16 in January. We're working on a feature on him right now. Actually, that's what I'm doing tonight. I'm in the edit suite working on a feature on Connor McDavid right now. And he's was granted exceptional status, as you mentioned, last spring. And he is a phenomenal hockey player. He's been on a 14-game point streak, which is longest in the OHL. He's playing against the other team's top defenseman. He gets Dougie Hamilton every time they play Niagara, someone who should be in the NHL right now. And, he's a remarkable, smart, skilled, the kind of kid that when you see him on the ice, the pace picks up when he has the puck and everything's just electric.
Who has he been compared to?
Well, Sidney Crosby compared him to himself. Mm-hmm. So I think that says enough.
It's amazing, and obviously Sidney Crosby has every right to do that, though it did sound kind of presumptuous when he did that. He reminds me of me. I'm the best, and he's like I am.
I don't have a problem with it.
All right, fair enough. Anyone else jumping out at you, Matty, in terms of like someone that maybe we didn't know much about at the beginning of the season, and after this short amount of time that the CHL has played, you've sort of said, whoa, this guy might be moving up?
No real surprises at this point. Alexander Barkov is a 17-year-old who's lighting up the Finnish league. He's his Russian father and was playing, I believe, in the Finnish Elite League last year as a 16-year-old, and I'm not sure exactly where he's at as of today, but he's lighting it up. And Jonathan Drouin, Nathan McKinnon's teammate in Halifax, his winger, an NHL scout described it to me the other day as poetry in motion, the two of them on the ice. And he missed about 2.5 weeks with a shoulder injury, just came back last week, had, I think, 8 points in 3 games, and he's not leading the league in points, but leading the league in points per game, and so he's another guy to watch.
When Barkov scores, they should play, "Who Let the Dogs Out?"
So where can we hear the podcast, Matt?
The first 2, well, you can find it on the, what do we call it? Is it the Podcast Center?
Is it Pod Center?
I'm not talking to any of you anymore.
I'm pretty sure it's Podcast Center. It's everything, Trade Center.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah. We do have the theme going. tsn.ca/podcast. Our producer, Mike Gentili, is always there to help us with these things.
And they're on iTunes as well as your podcast is.
So we encourage those of you who enjoy our podcast to check out Matt's podcast. Just the chance to listen to the dulcet tones of Steve Dryden alone is worth subscribing, I think.
Rick, you should get a podcast. Everyone else has one.
Seems like it.
You could do it every week from Croc Rock.
It's true. Wednesday nights.
Just do it on don't they have a firefighter night?
Yeah, that's every Wednesday.
Every Wednesday. Fired.
Hey, we got to get to our next guest. He's waiting on the line.
Oh, really?
You guys love this guy.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
Dan Shulman.
Oh, Dan Shulman. It's time to listen to Dan Shulman, and Rick will especially love this because we do talk a lot of Jays with the voice of baseball on ESPN, Dan Shulman.
Dan, where are you joining us from? Your house in Toronto?
Yes, sir. Just north of Toronto. The suburbs. I'm a 905er.
You're a 905er. Now, another thing we should congratulate you on is you just signed a new long-term deal with ESPN. Mm-hmm. So congratulations on that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited about that. I've been there a long time, and ever since I left TSN, I've been there, and love it. I get to do the 2 sports I love, and I like the people I work with, and there was no reason for me to go anywhere else.
Was there any, there was so much speculation about you. You're such a hot commodity. Fox re-upped with baseball, and NBC wanted to get in on it. And was there any thought about maybe I'll try someone else, work with someone else?
You know what? I'd never been a free agent before, and I guess technically I wasn't even this time because we got it done before the end. But there was some interest from other people, and it was very flattering. It's I'd never been through that before, and I'm like anybody else. Somebody massages your ego a little bit, and it's fun to listen to what people have to say. And there were some things that I listened to and from a couple of other networks, and they were all very tempting, and the people were wonderful and all that. And but at the end of the day, I guess I'm a creature of habit to a certain extent, and like I said, I like the sports I do. I know how my life works right now, and I'm not looking to change that too much, so it made sense to stay.
Dan, your favorite ballpark to call a game in?
San Francisco, and that's got nothing to do with the playoffs this year. I mean, I've always loved going to AT&T Park in San Francisco. It's beautiful. The garlic fries are unbelievable, and you get to you look out to the bay, McCovey Cove, and the Golden Gate Bridge, and all that. It's beautiful. The one you wouldn't expect to be up on the list, but is up there, is Pittsburgh. PNC Park in Pittsburgh is beautiful, and I'll put Wrigley and Fenway in a special category. Being the two really old stadiums, or ballparks, I should say, that are still in operation. I love doing games at both of those. Just the history and the atmosphere at both of those is pretty great too.
I couldn't agree with you more about PNC. That's such a beautiful park, and I love that they built it a little bit smaller. Do you think that could be a trend maybe going forward?
Yeah, I mean, a few have done that, and I think it's a good idea. There's no point putting 50,000 seats in if you're only going to sell 35 on a good day, and when I corrected myself from stadium to ballpark, I mean, PNC is a ballpark, and Yankee Stadium is a stadium. It's enormous, and I'm with you. I like the more intimate, and Minnesota Target Field is a little bit smaller, and I think it is smart. Most of the teams have built new ballparks in the last 20 years, so I don't know how many more new ones we're going to see, but I think they did a really good job in Pittsburgh.
Dan, for Jays fans, Skydome is such a fascinating discussion because on one hand, there's so many great memories of that stadium from the 92 and 93 World Series, and we all remember when it was full. But the reality is, this day and age, the crowds are not good. Yep. The stadium is outdated. It was practically outdated when it was finished, unfortunately.
Jay, your stadium reference is also outdated. It's the Rogers Center.
That's a good point. It is the Rogers Center, though we work for Bell, so I guess that's a little confusing too. Dan, what do you? Is there a solution there? Should they start over? Can they maintain what they're doing in what I still like to call it the Skydome, Dan?
Well, I don't think the team's going to pay for a new ballpark, and I don't think the public would want to pay for a new ballpark. So, yeah, in my mind, and I'll go with Skydome too, because that's it was Skydome, and it was the eighth wonder of the world in my mind until the day they opened Camden Yards in Baltimore, which was, I believe, 3 years later. And everybody went, why can't we have one of those? That's what I want for my baseball team. And then after Baltimore came Texas and Cleveland and Colorado and San Diego, and they're all beautiful, all of them. They're all great. I don't know what can be done about it, to be honest with you. I mean, Detroit and Cleveland have open-air stadiums, so we could. We could have a stadium with a retractable roof, like a lot do now. It's just, as people say, the answer to every important question that's ever been asked is money. It comes down to money. I think it would help the club if they got it, to be honest with you. I think that there are many reasons to come to this city. It's a beautiful city, but I think some ball players don't want to play here, and one of the reasons is it's not a great ballpark, and one of the reasons is they don't have natural grass. I'm not saying that would completely alter the perception of the franchise, but I think it would help a lot if they had a ballpark that people like coming to.
You never know what the mayor of Toronto, Rob Ford's capable of. He might find some protected forest, clear-cut it, and just put a stadium there.
Put it up in Vaughan. I wouldn't mind at all.
We had a discussion in the newsroom the other night about Exhibition Stadium, and I remember when people were whining again about the Dome, saying there's no atmosphere, and they said, why don't they go back to Exhibition Stadium? No, it was a dump.
Yeah. The thing about Exhibition Stadium, if you go back to the late 70s and the 80s, is there were a lot of ballparks then, like Cincinnati and Pittsburgh and St. Louis and Philadelphia and Houston. They all played in football stadiums, multi-purpose stadiums. The difference now is, I'm just off the top of my head, I'm trying to think, how many Oakland shares football and baseball, Toronto shares football and baseball. Is that it? I mean, that might be it. San Francisco used to play at Candlestick, and so you get my point. Nobody had a good stadium back then. Now, most people do have a good stadium. You're right, Exhibition Stadium. I mean, I'm born and raised in this city. I was there April 7, 77. I was the kid who took the bus to the subway to the streetcar to see the Sunday doubleheaders when the Tigers or Red Sox or Yankees came in 78, 79, 80, whenever it was. I was there when the Seagulls were there. I was there sitting on those godforsaken metal benches down the right field line that were 1,000 degrees in the summer and 1,000 degrees below zero in April and September. It was a tough ballpark. Remember how because it was a football stadium, if you got bleachers and you didn't get there in time, the outfield wall curved. The bleachers didn't because they were there for football. So you were like 100 yards behind the outfield fence. I will say this. The Rogers Center serves its purpose to a certain extent. When the weather's bad, they close the roof, you play. If you're driving all the way down from wherever it is you live, you know you're going to see a ball game. And that's not necessarily the case everywhere else. In a perfect world, they'd get a retractable roof, natural grass ballpark. But I just don't see it happening.
You mentioned Exhibition Stadium, those metal benches. I remember sitting on those, went with my parents, and it was the first and last Blue Jays game my mother ever went to because people spilt beer on the back of us the entire game. She said, "I'm never coming here again."
I got to tell you, that happens at the nice ballparks.
Exactly, I know.
That happens a lot in New York.
Now, you sounds like you lived and died with the Jays as well growing up. 85 Jays, my favorite Jays team of all time, the first year they won a pennant.
No question. I would agree with you as well. Now, part of that is the age I'm at. So I was born in 67, so I'm 10 when they're born. I'm 16 in 83 when they become good for the first time. I'm 18 when they win the division in 85 for the first time and make the playoffs. By the time I start working in the business, it is 91, basically. So I'm 24. I'm a little bit older. And I actually, whether I intended to do this or not, I don't even know. But once I started working in it, I distanced myself from it quickly as a fan. I didn't think I should be like that. I'm a fan. I'm an unabashed fan of the Green Bay Packers. I don't work on football, so that's all good. But I as soon as I got working into it, I think the fan in me really kind of curled up inside. So, but yeah, as a kid, as a teenager, I love baseball, and I still love baseball just as much as I always do. Now I'm more a fan of the sport, but I love that '85 team. And I can, Bell, Barfield, Mosby, Mullenix and Orge, Fernandez, Garcia, Upshaw, Witten, Martinez. We all know the team, and it was a fun team. And what was fun about that team is most of those guys had been Blue Jays for a number of years. We saw George Bell and Lloyd Mosby and Willie Upshaw and Jesse Barfield and Mullenix and Orge and Fernandez and Garcia. We saw them grow up. They all were drafted or signed as Blue Jays or were acquired at a very young age.
It wasn't a purchased team. No offense to the World Series winning teams.
Baseball was different then. It had changed by the early 90s. Free agency wasn't as prevalent then. The Yankees weren't the Yankees then. But it was a scouted, drafted, and developed team. We saw the struggles Lloyd Mosby had early. We rode the ups and downs of George Bell's moods. We knew those guys. And I think that's one of the reasons why that team was so special.
I guess that's one of the reasons people thought that the 2012 team would be special, Dan, because that was sort of the philosophy that Alex Anthopoulos took with this team. They wanted to develop some of the players that they had drafted and brought in themselves or traded at a young age. And at the same time, it ended up being a complete disaster. At what point in the season did you realize this team was taking on water?
Well, for the first, say, 2 months, I guess it was, they were playing pretty well. And I don't know what their record was. They were 2, 3, 4 games over 500. I thought they should have been better than that. But they were okay. They were hanging around. And then they had that week where 3 starting pitchers blew out their arms in a 4-day span, and that was it. Season was over. They actually did a decent job for about a month after that, kind of riding through that. But then they had more injuries, and then Bautista got hurt, and that was the end of it. So it was a disaster. It was a disaster on a number of fronts. I still believe they have a good system. They have good talent. I still believe they have a chance to be a good team. But this was a huge step back. I mean, you've lost your manager and 2 coaches. You had Yunel Escobar's, trials and tribulations and what he did, and the fact that he didn't have a good season. Adam Lind got sent down. Some of the pitching injuries are so serious they're not even going to be back until at least the All-Star break next year. They have some decisions to make, and I didn't say this last year, but I say this now. I think they need to go out and make a statement to the fans. I think they need to go out and really do something this summer and not just say we're going to be patient and wait for the kids. I think they need to supplement that somehow.
The thing that ticked me off about that team going into the season, I looked at the rotation and I said they can't win with the pitching they have. And now they've addressed that and says, yes, we need to address our starting rotation, but they needed to say that last year.
They could have won if everything turned out great. And that's a very risky
guys had to have record years.
Pardon me?
Most of the pitchers would have had record years for that to happen.
I mean, if Romero wins 18, and if Morrow wins 17, and if Drabek takes a big step forward, and if Henderson Alvarez does as well in year 2 as he did in year 1, and if. You look at the Giants, just as an example. If Sergio Romo winds up doing well as the closer, and if Marco Scudero plays as well as he does, and if Pablo Sandoval stays off the DL and keeps his weight down, and if Brandon Crawford matures as a shortstop, and if Buster Posey comes back healthy, that all happened. All of their ifs turned into yeses, pretty much for the Giants, and most of the Blue Jays' ifs turned into nos. I'm a big believer that baseball has more ifs than any other sport. The length of the season, the number of things that can go wrong, and you can probably only hope for half of your ifs to turn into yeses. So in that vein, I hope they go into next spring training with 7 or 8 legitimate starting candidates for that rotation.
Well, staying on pitching, Dan, this week a bunch of Jays fans pretty depressed about the Irvin Santana trade to KC. I think a lot of fans thought that was a guy they should have targeted. And then Jake Peavy signs an extension with the White Sox. Zach Greinke's out there, but he's made it pretty clear he doesn't want to come here. Are there options for the Jays?
There are. One is Anibal Sanchez, who pitched very well for the Tigers after the trade for the Marlins, but he's going to get a lot of money. I think he's looking at probably, 4 years and 50-something million. One is Dan Herron, who's going into the last year of his contract with the Angels. They've got an option on him. I think he's an interesting guy to look at, actually. I think he's kind of like a devalued stock right now, and I think you could buy low on Dan Herron. And there's some talk the Angels will move him, especially if they can keep Greinke. Ryan Dempster is an interesting name. He's Canadian. But all of these guys, the Blue Jays are not going to go out there and get a number one. It's just not going to happen. There aren't that many of them out there, and the Blue Jays aren't going to spend that kind of money. I think what the Blue Jays need is to get, say, a 3 and a 4, guys who just can keep you in the game. Experienced guys who can throw 6 or 7 innings, give up 2 or 3 runs, and give your offense a chance. What the Blue Jays need a lot of things. What the Blue Jays need more than anything is Brandon Morrow to be healthy and Ricky Romero to be the Ricky Romero of the last couple of years, not this year. If those two things don't happen, they're not going anywhere.
You touched upon Romero. Have you seen in the past an ace of a staff have the year Romero had and then bounce back?
It has happened a little bit. I think what worries me about Romero is how much of it was his inability to throw strikes. That makes you think there's something going on upstairs. It's one thing if you're now. I know he had his arm scoped, but he was throwing 92, 93. His velocity wasn't any different. I have always felt there's something we don't know about that was going on with Ricky Romero. And if there is, I hope he can get worked out for himself personally, never mind professionally, but as a pitcher as well. But there have been guys, Tim Lincecum this year is an example. I mean, his ERA was over 5 this year. It happens. This kind of thing happens in baseball more than in other sports. It's not like Kobe Bryant shoots 52% one year and 26% the next. It doesn't happen. But in baseball, guys lose 100 points on their average. Guys' ERAs go up a run and a half or 2 or something like that. And it's a funny sport that way. There's more mentally, I believe, to baseball than there is to, say, hockey, basketball, or football. There's a lot mentally to those sports, but they're more of a reaction sport. We've all played them, and we all get it. Baseball, you're thinking. It's closer to golf sometimes than it is to other sports. And you can get the yips. You can get the yips doing 100 different things. And we've seen pitchers, catchers, infielders all unable to ever throw strikes again. And I hope that's not the case. I hope whatever it is, physically, mentally, emotional, whatever it is, they're going to get it sorted out, and Ricky Romero can get back to being one of the better pitchers in the American League.
Dan, before we let you go, looking at the ratings in the United States for the clinching game, the game that the Giants swept the Tigers in, about 1 million less viewers than that Sunday night game in the NFL, which was a blowout. And I wonder if you look at things like that and you're concerned. I wonder, are young fans turning away from baseball? Is that concerning to you?
It is. I am a huge baseball fan. That having been said, football is king. I spent half my life in the United States. I cannot tell you how big it is. It's almost as big as hockey is in our country. The only reason it's not is because they've also got baseball and basketball, and they've got a more variety of sports, I think, that are followed a great deal than we do up here. Football is king, and that's not going away. And the second biggest sport other than the NFL is college football, in my opinion. NBA is huge, and baseball is big, but college football is huge as well. I think it's two things. I think, we and, our generation, our kids' generation more than anything, between the internet and the BlackBerries, and it's an ADD generation. We're all doing a million things at once, and baseball is going at a different pace. And I think the biggest mistake baseball has made, with everything they've done to look at or change the game, is they haven't sped up the game. And a 2.5-hour baseball game feels like it flies. A 3.5-hour baseball game feels like it drags. The sport's slow and it's slower, and I'm not sure it's ever going to appeal to as many people as it used to. The demographics are skewing older and older and older all the time. Yes, it does concern me. I hope they speed up the games. I hope they continue to work on a system where a number of different teams can thrive, and not just in October. I mean in the regular season. Like we need the Kansas Cities and Pittsburghs and Torontos to do well in the regular season and have a chance. So yeah, long answer to your question. I apologize, but it does concern me. There's not a damn thing I can do about it, but it does worry me a great deal.
And start the World Series games earlier.
That you're not going to win that one because it's 5:30 out west and people got to work. So it's that's a tricky one too. But if it started at 8:07, which it did, and it ended before 11, that'd be okay.
Yeah.
Hey, at least remember when the Yankees were playing the Red Sox in the American League Championship Series, those games, I did those games. They ended after midnight on a good day. So at least, other teams are playing a little bit quicker. But, boy, I'd like to see them speed up the game.
By the way, Dan, you, when you're on the desk doing some insider stuff with Rod Smith, drives us nuts when we have to throw to on SportsCenter because it comes back to us. It sounds like we haven't even hit puberty.
But you got better hair than I do.
Oh, well, Dan does. I'm on my way to your territory, but that's okay. You've been so successful.
My only advice is go gracefully. You'll be happy you did.
You know what? I appreciate that advice. Hey, Dan, before we let you go, you travel so much. What's your number one travel tip for people when they're traveling throughout North America? Because I feel like you've become such an experienced traveler now. I feel like you must have some routines and some things that you do to sort of keep yourself sane through airports.
Or do you crumple up your clothes when you leave the hotel room and they're just in a ball when you get home?
You know what? I can fold a suit with the best of them. I don't take the big bag. I can fold it in the little bag, and as long as you hang it up early enough, it's going to be okay. Always get 2 room keys. You're always going to lose one. I mean, you're probably going to lose 2, but always get a second one. But I'm just I do it a lot. I never rent a car ever. That would be my number one tip. Don't rent a car. Take a cab or find somebody to drive you.
That's a great piece of advice.
Because renting a car, it's just so time-consuming. And, at the old Seinfeld episode, they're excellent at taking the reservation. They're not necessarily as good at holding the reservation. So I'm right into a cab, right to the hotel. And if I can walk to the ballpark, that's first choice. If I can find a 22-year-old runner on the staff who wants to drive me, that's second choice. I'll take a cab. But I want to cut out the unnecessary stuff as much as possible. And I don't know if a rental car company is sponsoring the podcast. I hope not. But I would cut out the rental car at all.
No, it's sponsored by Mark's Work Warehouse, which is now Mark's. So for you coming on the podcast, you're going to get some clothes from Mark's.
And they're wrinkle-free. You know what, Dan? They're wrinkle-free. Wrinkle-free, perfectly pressured. Listen, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. You're absolutely one of our favorite broadcasters, so we really wanted to get you on. And I know you're a busy guy, but thanks again. Congratulations on the contract, and rest up, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys. Thank you.
One of those chairs needs some WD-40, a lot of squeaking.
Yeah. That's you. That was you. That was your chair.
And I don't know if you need to do it on podcast, but when you have a guest on the radio, you always have to remind the listener who it is. It was just because we never did it once when Dan was on. We didn't remind people, say, hey, by the way, we're with the voice of baseball, Dan Shulman.
Because when you hear his voice, you instantly know who he is.
I don't know. I don't know the rules for podcasts. I'm just learning this.
Hey, there's no words there. To play us out. What does that mean?
We'll do it live. Okay. We'll do it live. It. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
It's the new favorite feature of the podcast, the Story Time with Producer Tim.
We are getting so much great feedback about Story Time with Producer Tim. People are enjoying it. You're never going to see his face, but you're going to hear his voice heavily modulated.
Boy, he was stressed out the other night when we had that 93-hour World Series of Poker, Nerd Fest.
Oh, yeah. Festival of Nerddom.
Yeah, we were sitting there watching.
you, sir. I call.
We were sitting there watching it, and these guys are. If you're sitting at the table, you're a millionaire.
Yeah.
I'd be overjoyed. I'd be cracking some beers. These guys, no joy.
I know.
In their faces, in their lives.
I talked to TSN poker expert Jennifer Hedger about it, and she said, they had their poker faces on. They're not going to deviate from that. But you'd think if they're there they were there for 12 hours. At some point, you got to crack, don't you? Don't you have to crack a smile?
Are they wearing deepers?
They're their pants. Just sitting there crapping themselves.
That'd be a good way to throw off the competition.
Yeah.
Just eat a bunch of burritos and then sit down at that table.
Just yourself repeatedly. And not always audible, like sometimes silent, so it's just wafting through the air.
By the way, way to go.
Mike Gentili, our producer, is really enjoying this particular line of conversation right now.
I thought we'd make it through a podcast without potty talk, but I guess not.
No, potty talk is a big part of the potty.
Okay, so story time with producer Tim. Let's do it.
Can you tell me a bedtime story?
One night while Dan was working, his computer suddenly shut off. He couldn't figure out why. I joked with him maybe you should make sure it's plugged in. He didn't think it was funny. Then he called an engineer to come down and fix his computer. The engineer came down, plugged the computer back in after Dan had kicked the plug out. Dan felt shame. The end.
Wow.
Lies. It wasn't my computer, it was my monitor.
Oh, still, that's pretty embarrassing.
Well,
Dan felt shame.
You should have felt shame.
We work, we've already talked about it in detail, the SportsCenter newsroom, but it's like a hotel room built in like 1950 with no exposed outlets. You go to plug in your phone or your laptop, you've got to move 8,000-pound furniture.
And you've got to unplug stuff that probably should remain plugged in.
Exactly. So that's what it's like in the newsroom. You have to crawl under a desk there's screws protruding from it. It's dangerous. It's full of dust, mothballs, there's dead bunnies down there.
It's like an opening scene of Indiana Jones. There's a ball that's coming after you. You've got to outrun it.
So I must have hit it with my foot. I'm not going under there.
And so, why not call someone else to do it?
I didn't know that was the situation. If it was an easily accessible outlet, I could have figured it out myself. But instead,
Did you buy that engineer, did you buy him a case of beer or something like that to make up for it?
It was 1 a.m. There was nothing. No.
All right.
Dan felt shame.
Yeah, you should. You should feel shame. Hearing that Star Wars music reminds me, before we get to the mark of the week, what did you think of this whole, speaking of Festival of Nerddom, Twitter was like a nerd utopia when Disney bought Lucasfilm.
And I just heard
$4 billion.
He's donating all of it to charity?
That's the most amazing thing.
That is
of all.
unbelievable.
Yeah, he's donating the $4 billion to charity. I like this. I like anything that gets the Star Wars franchise out of George Lucas's hands and into capable filmmakers' hands.
Is he crazy?
Well, I think he's got some craziness. But he's more he's, Industrial Light and Magic, Skywalker Sound. He's like a technical genius guy, and he prefers that kind of thing. And he comes up with good story ideas, but he should never be writing scripts. See episode 2, Attack of the Clones, for that.
I didn't watch any of the new ones. None of them.
Well, your life is more enriched because of that. Because they were horrible atrocities, and they ruined my childhood in many, many ways.
Was it Rob Delaney sent out a tweet? It said, whenever Jar Jar comes on screen, Mitt Romney says to himself, yes, brilliant.
So he says, terrific.
Yes.
I love that. Terrific. Terrific. He is a terrific character.
At what age can you show Star Wars to kids? Because I'd like my daughter.
It's a kid's movie. I mean, you can, I think, at 6.
But Darth Vader would scare the living...
Yeah, well, you know what? Kids need to be scared a little bit. They need to know that there's evil forces out there, and they should
that witch
be ready.
and Wizard of Oz still terrifies me to this day. Just, seriously.
Yeah, no, I'm with you.
Okay, mark of the week. Again, if you haven't listened to a podcast before...
3 and 3.
3 for 6.
Yeah. 3 wins, 3 losses, and I really blew it last week, so I got to bounce back.
Since it's the Mark's Perfectly Pressed Shirt podcast, we do a famous Mark of the Week.
Yep.
And let's see where the Plinko chip falls this week.
We got the long one again.
That's what she said.
It was ha 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 ha, but lots of ho ho hee hee ho ho hee. His laugh should be like a musical instrument. It should sort of illustrate his mood.
First of all, terrific joke by you. I have no idea.
Play it one more time.
Yeah, let me hear that one more time.
It was ha 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 ha, but lots of ho ho hee hee ho ho hee. His laugh should be like a musical instrument. It should sort of illustrate his mood.
Oh, man. I feel like I know, but it's escaped me now. I'm going to say it's Edmonton Oilers star Mark Messier.
We were just talking about something that he became famous for being.
Oh, Mark Hamill.
Right.
Darn it. I should have.
You are our winner. So I guess he does the Joker on the new Batman video game and the cartoon?
Right, yes. You know what he also said this week? That George Lucas invited Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, Luke Skywalker and Leia Skywalker, which is weird in the end because they made out in the first movie, and then, they're brother and sister. Yeah, I meant that all along. Sure you did, George, you pervert. Anyway, he said he invited the two of them up to his ranch near San Francisco and told them that there was going to be more Star Wars movies way ahead of this Disney deal. So he still keeps the original actors, the principal performers of the original films, up to speed on what's going on in the Star Wars universe.
You remember I really like that Batman cartoon that came out it's probably 20 years ago now. What was it, Batman Gotham City or something? He had the really, really square jaw. Do you remember that Batman cartoon?
I don't, but I remember The Dark Knight Returns, which was the Frank Miller comic that probably inspired that cartoon.
Yeah.
Because I'm a nerd myself.
I raise you.
Okay, so again, visit tsn.ca/Movember.
I can't believe the party's over already.
Donate money. Again, it goes towards prostate cancer. And also, Chris Cuthbert tweeted the other day. He says, yes, a lot of things going on in November. It was just Halloween. It was Movember going on. Don't forget to wear a poppy.
That's a great point. And we'll be wearing them starting tonight.
Yes, I was mentioning what the poppy represents to my daughter the other day, and it's tough wrapping a kid's mind around war. You're just like, yeah, they killed the bad guys, and she's like, are all the bad guys gone? I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty sure they got rid of all of them.
Dan O'Toole, history teacher.
Dan Filcher.
Thanks for listening, and yes, Movember and Remembrance Day. Remember both, and thanks for listening.
They're going home.
Dance. 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 Keep dancing.
I wanna live with a cinnamon girl.
Brought to you by Mark's Never Iron Perfectly Pressed Shirts. This is the Jay and Dan Podcast.